The children don't scream. That's the part that still haunts people. There's no chaos caught on tape, no frantic 911 call, no neighbors reporting a disturbance. Instead, there's silence. A quiet house in Ruxburg, Idaho. Beds neatly made. A woman smiling at the camera. A new husband. A beach wedding in Hawaii. And 2 children who simply vanish. Not because they ran away. Not because they were taken by a stranger. But because somewhere along the line their mother decided they were no longer children. They were obstacles. They were dark. And in Lori Vallow's mind, removing them wasn't murder. It was obedience. Welcome to GBR Life Transmissions. I'm your host, Caitlin, and you're listening to GBR Life of Crimes, where we explore not just what happened in crimes committed by women, but why they happened, and the psychology behind them. Today's case isn't about insanity in the way people expect. It's about belief, control, and how the idea of being chosen can slowly turn love into justification. This is the story of Lori Vallow Daybell. But before we dive into the darkness, let me tell you who Lori was. Before the world knew her name, before the murders, before Chad Daybell, before the system that would consume her and destroy the people she was supposed to protect. Lori Noreen Cox was born on June 26, 1973, in San Bernardino, California. She grew up in a large Latter-day Saint family, the kind where church wasn't just Sunday morning. It was the framework for everything. Family dinners, social circles, identity. By all accounts, Lori's childhood was relatively normal. She wasn't abused. She wasn't neglected. She was described as bubbly, outgoing, and well-liked. She loved performing. She loved being seen. And she had that quality some people have, where they walk into a room and you just notice them. But underneath that charm, there was something else. Something people didn't see at first. A need for attention that went above normal. A belief that she was special, different, chosen. And that belief would only grow stronger. And as Lori got older, she didn't just date. She married. Again and again and again. Her first marriage was in 1992, when she was just 19 years old. His name was Nelson Yanes, and it lasted less than a year. It was over almost as quickly as it began. And then her second husband was William. They married in 1995. Lori had her first child during this marriage, a son named Colby. But by 1998, that marriage was over too. And then came Joseph Ryan in 2001. This marriage was different, more volatile. Joseph would later claim Lori was violent and unstable and manipulative. He accused her of threatening him. They had a daughter together, Tylee Ryan, born in 2002. But this marriage didn't last either. By 2004, Lori had filed for divorce and accused Joseph of abusing Tylee, an allegation that was investigated but never substantiated. Joseph always denied it, and years later, when Joseph died suddenly in 2018 of a heart attack, people would start asking questions. Because by then, a pattern was starting to emerge. People around Lori didn't just leave, they died. In 2006, Lori married Charles Vallow, a successful businessman who seemed stable, kind, and devoted. Together they adopted a boy named Joshua Jackson Vallow, known as JJ. JJ was the biological grandson of Charles's sister, and he had special needs. He was on the autism spectrum and required extra care, patience, and attention. For a while, things seemed good. Lori appeared to be a devoted mother. She posted photos on social media of all of her kids. She smiled at church events. She seemed normal, But beneath the surface, something was shifting. Around 2014 or 15, Lori's religious beliefs started to change. She had always been devout, but now she was becoming something else. She started attending preparedness events, gatherings where people discussed the end times, apocalyptic prophecies, and spiritual warfare. These weren't mainstream LDS teachings. They were fringe beliefs held by a small subset of people who believed the second coming of Jesus was imminent. And this was where Lori began to believe she wasn't just a member of a church. She was chosen. She started claiming that she could see visions, that she had past lives, that she had a direct line to God. Her friends later recalled how she would talk about being a goddess in training, how she believed she had been selected for a special mission, how she talked about the imminent collapse of society and the need to be spiritually pure. But here's the thing about belief systems like this. They don't stay abstract. They become reality. And once that happens, the people around you stop being people. They become characters in your story. And people often ask, was she delusional? But the answer here is complicated. Delusion in the clinical sense usually involves beliefs that are bizarre, irrational, and unshakable, despite evidence to the contrary. But Lori's beliefs weren't entirely bizarre within the context of the community she was in. Apocalyptic thinking exists in many religious traditions. The idea of past lives, spiritual warfare, and being chosen, these concepts aren't unusual in certain spiritual circles. What made Lori's dangerous wasn't that her beliefs were strange. It's how she weaponized them. A chosen identity forms when someone believes that they have special insight or a divine role and moral authority over others. And once someone sees themselves as chosen, normal rules usually stop applying, especially the rule that says you don't get to decide who lives and who dies. In October of 2018, Lori attended a religious conference in St. George, Utah, and that's where she met him, Chad Daybell. Chad was a 49-year-old author and a self-published religious fiction writer who specialized, I'm sure you guessed it, in apocalyptic novels about the end times. He ran a small publishing company and was seen as a thought leader in certain fringe LDS circles. He believed that he could see people's past lives. He also claimed to have visions of the future. He talked about light and dark ratings, a system where people could be ranked on spiritual scale. And when Lori met him, something clicked. It wasn't just attraction, it was validation. Here was someone who didn't think she was crazy, someone who agreed with her, someone who saw the same visions, believed the same prophecies, and confirmed that yes, she was chosen. And together they began constructing a shared mythology. They believed that they had been married in multiple past lives. They believed that they were among the 144,000 chosen people mentioned in the book of Revelation who would be saved during the apocalyptic times, according to the LDS religion. They believed that certain people were possessed by dark spirits, zombies they called them, and that these people were no longer truly alive. And here's where it gets chilling. They started rating people around them. Lori's husband, Charles, dark. Chad's wife, Tammy, dark. Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, dark. And once someone was labeled dark, they weren't just a problem. They were spiritually dead, which means removing them wasn't murder. It was a mission. Isolation creates delusion, but collaboration stabilizes it. And when two people mirror each other's extreme beliefs, it stops feeling extreme. It feels confirmed, validated, real. In psychology, this is a shared psychotic disorder where delusions are transmitted from one person to the other. But Lori and Chad's case is even more dangerous because their beliefs weren't just shared, they were mutually reinforcing. Every time Lori had a vision, Chad confirmed it. Every time Chad made a prediction, Lori believed it. And without a doubt, conscience weakens. But let's talk about Charles Vallow. By early 2019, Charles was terrified. His wife, the woman that he had been married to for over a decade, was talking about being a goddess. She was saying that she lived dozens of past lives. She was claiming that the people around her were possessed by demons, and she was saying that Charles himself was dark. So yes, he knew that she was saying that his body had been taken over by a demon named Ned Schneider. And in January of 2019, Charles called the police. He told them his wife was having a mental breakdown. He said she believed that she was being translated, being sent to lead the 144,000 in the Second Coming. He said she threatened to kill him. The police interviewed Lori, and she denied everything. She was calm, collected, and convincing. No charges were filed. But of course, Charles did file for divorce at this point, and he tried to protect the children. He tried to get custody of JJ, but he ran out of time. On July 11th, 2019, Charles went to Lori's home in Chandler, Arizona to pick up JJ. He got into an argument with Lori's brother, Alex Cox, and Alex shot him twice in the chest. Charles died on the living room floor. Alex claimed it was self-defense. He said Charles had attacked him with a baseball bat. The police initially accepted this, but the truth, Charles never had a chance. Text messages later revealed that Lori and Alex had been planning Charles's death. They needed him to get out of the way because he was dark and he was an obstacle. And with Charles gone, Lori was free. Free to be with Chad. Free to collect Charles's life insurance, and free to move forward with the plan. Chad Daybell was married, and his wife's name was Tammy. Tammy was a librarian. She was quiet, kind, and devoted to her family. She and Chad had 5 children together. By all accounts, their marriage seemed stable. But Tammy was in the way. In September of 2019, someone tried to shoot Tammy in her own driveway. A masked man fired at her with what she thought was a paintball gun, and she reported it to police, but nothing came of it. On October 19th, 2019, Tammy Daybell died in her sleep. She was 49 years old. Chad told people that she had a coughing fit and passed away peacefully, and no autopsy was performed. Less than 2 weeks later, Chad married Lori in a beach ceremony in Hawaii. They were smiling, laughing, dancing. Tammy's body was later exhumed. The autopsy revealed that she had been asphyxiated. She didn't die in her sleep. She was murdered. And then JJ and Tylee. Because they weren't just victims. They were children with personalities, with dreams, and with people who loved them. JJ was 7 years old. He was energetic, affectionate, and deeply loved by everyone who knew him. Yes, he had autism and required special care. And he did attend a special education program. And he had his routines and his favorite foods and his favorite shows. His biological grandmother, Kay Woodcock, Charles's sister, adored him. She stayed in constant contact with him. She called him, she visited him, she made sure he was okay. But after Charles died, Kay started to lose contact because Lori stopped answering calls or sending updates, and then suddenly Lori moved. In September of 2019, just weeks after Charles's death, Lori packed up and moved from Arizona to Rexburg, Idaho, right near Chad Daybell. JJ started a new school, Kennedy Elementary, and he attended for 3 days. And then, on September 23, 2019, Lori all of a sudden withdrew him from school, saying she was going to homeschool him. But no one saw JJ alive after that. And Tylee was 16. She was bright, independent, and fiercely protective of her little brother. She loved photography, music. She had friends and plans and a whole life ahead of her. But she was also perceptive. She saw what was happening, and she knew something was wrong. And that made her dangerous to Lori. In Lori and Chad's belief system, Tylee, again, was rated dark. She was essentially possessed, according to them. And the last confirmed sighting of Tylee was on September 8, 2019. She was seen at Yellowstone National Park with Lori, JJ, and Alex Cox. Photos show her smiling, posing, and just enjoying the day. Hours later, she was dead. Her body was dismembered and burned and buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. When people started asking questions, Lori lied. Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, kept calling. She kept asking to speak to JJ. She kept saying something was wrong. And Lori told her JJ was fine, that he was busy, but he was with friends. But Kay didn't believe her. And in November 2019, Kay called the police and asked them to do a welfare check. Police in Rexburg, Idaho went to Lori's apartment. Lori answered the door. She told them JJ was in Arizona with a family friend. When the police checked with the friend, they said they didn't have JJ. Police returned to Lori's apartment the next day, but she was gone. She and Chad had fled to Hawaii. Remember, they were married now, and they just kept lying. And when they asked where JJ was, Lori just kept saying he was safe. And then they asked about Tylee, and Lori said that she's at college, even though Tylee had never been enrolled anywhere. For months, Lori and Chad went to the beach. They posted photos on social media, and they lived like nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, those two children were buried in Chad's backyard. People struggle to understand how Lori could act so normal. How could a mother smile and dance and post photos while her children were dead? The answer lies in moral offloading. When someone believes that they're acting on divine authority, guilt doesn't register the same way. Responsibility gets offloaded to a higher power. I didn't choose this. I was instructed. This had to happen. In Lori's mind, the problem had already been solved. JJ and Tylee were dark. They were possessed. They weren't really her children anymore, so she didn't grieve. She celebrated. Because in her distorted reality, she had just completed a mission. And on June 9th of 2020, police executed a search warrant at Chad Daybell's property in Salem, Idaho. They had been investigating for months, following leads, tracking phone records, piecing together timelines, and they knew those children were somewhere on that property. Cadaver dogs hit on 2 locations in the backyard. Investigators began to dig. First, they found JJ, and his little body was wrapped in plastic and duct tape. He was still wearing his red pajamas, the same pajamas he had been wearing the last time anyone had seen him alive. He had been bound and suffocated. And then they found Tylee, or what was left of her. Her body had been dismembered and burned, so her remains were scattered in a fire pit and buried in multiple locations. The brutality here is just unimaginable. The world reacted with horror, but Lori, she didn't break or confess. But worse, she didn't show remorse. And that would mean admitting that she was never chosen after all. Lori and Chad were arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. And the legal proceedings took years, but she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chad was also found guilty, and he was sentenced to death. And throughout the trial, you would think that at some point she would have broken or realized. But no, there was no visible emotion when the verdict was read. In fact, she smiled a few times during the trial itself, because in her mind, she believed that she was right. And for someone like Lori, admitting guilt would mean her identity was false. Her beliefs were wrong, and her sense of purpose was built on destruction. That level of collapse is unbearable for some people, so they simply don't let it happen. They maintain the delusion. They protect that narrative, because the alternative means accepting that they destroyed innocent lives for nothing. And it's just too devastating to face. This case isn't just about Lori Vallow. It's about how belief systems, when left unchecked, can become weapons. It's about how charismatic individuals can manipulate spiritual frameworks to justify the unthinkable. It's about how isolation, validation, and shared delusion can create an echo chamber where murder becomes a mission. Lori didn't snap one day. This was a progression, a series of small steps, each one justified by belief, each one reinforced by Chad, and each one moving further away from empathy and closer to certainty. And that's what makes this case so unsettling, because the most dangerous people don't always act out of rage. Sometimes they act out of certainty. Lori Vallow Daybell didn't see herself as a villain. She saw herself as necessary. Remember, she was chosen, and that belief allowed her to do something most people could never imagine. She killed her own children, not in rage, not due to psychosis, but methodically, with planning and help. And then she went to the beach. And that's the part that will always haunt people. Not just that she did it, but that she felt nothing. This has been GBRLIFE of Crimes, part of GBRLIFE Transmissions, and I'm Caitlin, reminding you that understanding the darkness helps us appreciate the light. Join me next time as we uncover another case that challenges everything we thought we knew about the criminal mind.